Welcome to Sleepy Scholar, where time slows down and history becomes a lullaby. Come sit beside me, here by the crackling fire. The light is low, the world is quiet, and the past is waiting to whisper its stories. Rest your head, get cozy, and let's wander together through marble halls and sunlit courtyards of ancient Rome. Long ago, in the gentle hills of central Italy, nestled beside the slow-moving Tiber River, a small group of settlements began to stir with the first breaths of what would become one of the most influential civilizations in human history. The story of Rome, like many ancient tales, begins not just with historical fact, but with myth, softly woven stories passed down by generations, as if whispered beside evening fires. The legend tells of twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, born of divine and royal lineage, left to drift in the waters of the Tiber. A she-wolf, drawn by the cries of the infants, took them in, suckling them with care in the sheltering shadows of a cave. Raised by shepherds, the boys grew strong and brave. In time, they sought to build a new city of their own. But like many origin stories, the myth takes a darker turn. Romulus, in a quarrel over the city's location, takes the life of his brother, and thus Romulus becomes the first king of Rome, giving the city his name. Whether this story holds any truth, we may never know. Yet in its poetic way, it speaks to the spirit of Rome, born from struggle, shaped by ambition, and always reaching forward. In reality, Rome's beginnings were more gradual, grounded in geography and trade. The land was fertile, the river offered access to the sea, and the surrounding hills provided natural defense. The early Romans lived among other Italic tribes, the Latins, the Sabines, and the Etruscans. Of these, the Etruscans to the north played a particularly important role in early Roman development. With their sophisticated culture, urban planning, and intricate religious rites, the Etruscans left their mark on the young city. Rome, at first, was a monarchy. Kings ruled not as despots, but as leaders of small communities, managing disputes, leading religious ceremonies, and organizing defense. Over time, Rome grew in strength and complexity. Roads were built, walls were raised, and trade flourished. The Etruscan influence is still visible in some of Rome's earliest structures and religious practices. But change was coming. Around 509 BCE, tradition holds that the Roman people, weary of monarchical rule, overthrew their last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus. His rule had been marked by cruelty, and his downfall came in the wake of a scandal that stirred outrage and a desire for reform. In his place, the Romans established a new system of government, one without kings. Thus began the Roman Republic. The Republic was an experiment in shared governance. At its heart was the Senate, a council of elders, mostly from Rome's noble families, who advised the magistrates and shaped policy. Executive power rested in two consuls, elected each year, who shared power and could veto each other's decisions. This careful balance was designed to prevent the rise of another tyrant. It was not, however, a democracy in the modern sense. Power remained concentrated in the hands of the patricians, the aristocratic class. The plebeians, the common people, had limited influence, though this would evolve over time. Rome's early republic faced many trials. Internally, The struggle between patricians and plebeians led to the creation of new institutions, including the office of the tribune, whose job it was to protect the rights of the commoners. These tensions would echo throughout Roman history, shaping its laws and customs. Externally, Rome fought to survive. Surrounded by rival tribes and cities, it had to defend its land constantly. Through a mix of diplomacy, military skill, and sometimes sheer perseverance, Rome gradually extended its influence across the Italian peninsula. One of Rome's most distinctive qualities was its adaptability. Unlike many ancient states, Rome often integrated those it conquered. Allies were granted certain rights. Soldiers from other towns fought under Roman banners. In time, many were given Roman citizenship. This inclusivity, though not all as generous or equal, helped Rome grow in strength and numbers. Daily life in early Rome was modest. Homes were simple. Meals often consisted of bread, olives, and wine. Religion was deeply embedded in daily practice. Each household had its own gods and rituals, while public ceremonies honored the deities of state. The Roman calendar, influenced by agriculture and celestial observations, marked festivals and sacred days with care and reverence. Education, too, held importance. While formal schools were rare in early times, children, especially boys from wealthy families, were taught by tutors or in family settings. They learned to read and write in Latin, recited poetry, and studied the deeds of heroes. Women in the Republic, while excluded from public office, played vital roles in family and social life. They managed households, maintained religious traditions, and raised children with the values of discipline, loyalty, and honor. As the Republic matured, its institutions became more structured. Laws were codified in the 12 Tables, Rome's first written legal code, etched on bronze tablets and displayed in the Forum for all to see. This transparency marked a significant step toward a more equitable society, even if inequality persisted. The Forum itself became the heart of Roman public life. A bustling square filled with temples, markets, and gathering spaces. It was where citizens debated, merchants sold their goods, and magistrates delivered judgments. The sounds of daily life, footsteps on stone, the call of vendors, the rhythm of speech echoed against the marble columns and tiled roofs. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome had grown from a scattered village into a regional power, but its ambitions reached further still. With each victory, the Republic's borders expanded. With each expansion, new challenges emerged: how to govern diverse peoples, how to manage wealth, how to maintain unity. Yet, despite these growing pains, there remained a certain Roman spirit of order, of civic pride, of determination to build something that would last beyond a single generation. The foundations were being laid not just for an empire, but for a legacy. As Rome's republic grew stronger, its influence spread across the Italian peninsula and beyond. But with expansion came challenges, not just from without, but from within. As Rome transitioned from a city-state into a vast and complex republic, it began to face questions no constitution had fully prepared it to answer. The Punic Wars marked a turning point. Rome's most formidable rival at the time was Carthage, a powerful city in North Africa, known for its navy, trade networks, and vast wealth. The First Punic War, beginning in 264 BCE, was primarily a struggle for control over Sicily. What began as a regional conflict soon escalated into a drawn-out and grueling series of wars that would span over a century. The most famous of these was the Second Punic War, in which the Carthaginian general Hannibal famously crossed the Alps with war elephants, a feat as awe-inspiring as it was dangerous. For years, Hannibal ravaged the Italian countryside, winning battle after battle, but Rome, resilient and resourceful, held firm. In time, Roman forces under Scipio Africanus carried the war to Carthaginian soil, forcing Hannibal to retreat. The final defeat of Carthage came in the Third Punic War, when the city was utterly destroyed in 146 BCE. Rome emerged victorious, but the cost of these wars was immense, socially, economically, and politically. The influx of wealth, slaves, and land into the hands of a few elites began to create a rift in Roman society. The small farmers who had once formed the backbone of the Republic now struggled, their lands lost to debt or swallowed by large estates known as latifundia. Many migrated to the city hoping for work, only to find Rome overcrowded and chaotic. These changes sparked reform efforts. The Gracchus brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, stood as tribunes and proposed redistributing land to the poor. Their ideas were popular with the people, but met fierce resistance from the Senate and elite classes. Both brothers would die violently, their reforms largely undone, yet their actions would echo for decades, igniting a growing sense of unrest. As political conflict deepened, Rome's military also began to change. Soldiers, once land-owning citizens loyal to the Republic, increasingly came from the lower classes. Generals began offering them land and wealth in exchange for loyalty, not to Rome, but to themselves. This shift laid the groundwork for a series of powerful military leaders to rise. Among them was Gaius Marius, a general who reformed the army and opened its ranks to the landless poor. Marius's successes on the battlefield made him a popular figure, but they also set a precedent. Political power, once the domain of senators and magistrates, could now be won through military strength. Following Marius came Lucius Cornelius Sulla, another general who marched his army on Rome itself twice. Sulla seized control of the state, declared himself dictator, and initiated brutal proscriptions against his enemies. When he eventually stepped down, the damage had been done. The Republic had been shaken to its core. And yet, amid this turmoil, Rome continued to grow. Its provinces stretched from Spain to Greece, from North Africa to the edge of the Near East. Governors managed these distant lands, bringing back taxes and goods. Roman roads connected cities, and Latin began to spread as a common language. But the heart of the Republic beat unsteadily. In this environment of shifting power and growing discontent, a new figure rose to prominence: Julius Caesar. Born in 100 BCE, Caesar was a patrician by birth, but knew the power of the people. Charismatic, intelligent, and ambitious, he quickly climbed the political ladder. As consul, he forged alliances with two other powerful men: Pompey the Great, a successful general, and Crassus, a wealthy businessman. Together, they formed the first triumvirate, a fragile, unofficial pact to dominate Roman politics. Caesar was given command in Gaul, where he led military campaigns that expanded Roman territory and brought immense wealth. His commentaries on the Gallic War, written in clear, persuasive prose, were were circulated in Rome, portraying him as a brilliant and heroic leader. But alliances rarely last. Crassus died in battle. Tensions rose between Caesar and Pompey. The Senate, wary of Caesar's growing influence, ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome. Instead, in 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, a boundary no general was permitted to cross with an army, uttering the fateful phrase, Alea iacta est, or the die is cast. By crossing the Rubicon, Caesar defied the Republic. Civil war erupted. It was a swift and dramatic affair. Caesar defeated Pompey's forces, pursued him to Egypt, and became entangled in the politics of the Ptolemaic court, where he met Cleopatra. Upon his return to Rome, he was appointed dictator, not temporarily, as was the tradition in times of crisis, but for life. As dictator, Caesar enacted reforms. He restructured debts, redistributed land, reformed the calendar, creating the Julian calendar still recognizable today. Yet his concentration of power alarmed many, especially senators who saw the Republic slipping away. On the Ides of March 44 BCE, a group of senators, including some of Caesar's closest allies, stabbed him to death in the theater of Pompey. Their aim was to save the Republic. Instead, they plunged it further into chaos. In the aftermath, Caesar's death did not restore the Republic. Instead, it led to another series of civil wars. One of the central figures in this next chapter was Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, later known as Augustus. Octavian formed a new alliance, the second with Augustus at the helm. The Roman world entered a period of remarkable peace, prosperity, and cultural flourishing. This era, known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, lasted for over 2 centuries, from 27 BCE to around 180 CE. It was a time when roads were safe, borders secure, and trade flowed freely across a vast empire that stretched from the Atlantic Ocean in the west to the deserts of Arabia in the east. Augustus proved to be a skilled and pragmatic ruler. Though he wielded absolute power, he maintained the illusion of republican institutions, allowing the Senate to function while ensuring all meaningful authority rested in his hands. He reformed the tax system, strengthened the military, and initiated vast public works. Rome itself was transformed from a city of brick, as Augustus famously said, into a city of marble. Temples gleamed in the sunlight, forums bustled with life, and aqueducts brought fresh water from the distant hills. The imperial household remained modest by design, reinforcing Augustus's image as a leader of restraint and civic virtue. But behind the modest facades, a complex and well-oiled machine of governance had taken root. The provinces of Rome, once distant and volatile, were now integrated parts of a grander whole. Roman roads, meticulously constructed and maintained, allowed soldiers, merchants, and messages to traverse the empire with efficiency. Local elites were often incorporated into administration, encouraged to adopt Roman customs while preserving a measure of autonomy. Latin spread in the west, Greek in the east, and a shared Roman identity began to take shape. Following Augustus, a line of emperors continued to steer the ship of state with varying degrees of success. Some are remembered fondly, others less so. After Augustus came Tiberius, reserved, calculating, and unpopular, but effective. Then came Caligula, known for his erratic behavior and excesses, and Claudius, who expanded the empire into Britain. Perhaps most famously, Nero succeeded Claudius. He is often remembered for his cruelty, extravagance, and for allegedly fiddling while Rome burned. Though this story, like many from ancient times, is colored by the perspectives of his critics. Nero's reign ended in revolt and suicide, ushering in a brief period of civil war known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Yet the stability of the empire proved resilient. From this chaos emerged Vespasian, founder of the Flavian dynasty. Under his rule and that of his sons, the Colosseum, also called the Flavian Amphitheater, was constructed. It stood as a monument to Roman engineering and a stage for the spectacles that entertained and distracted the masses. By the 2nd century CE, Rome reached its height under a group of rulers known as the Five Good Emperors. This sequence of capable and generally benevolent leaders, Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, brought wisdom and consistency to the empire's governance. Trajan expanded Rome to its greatest territorial extent, bringing Dacia, modern-day Romania, under Roman control. His successor, Hadrian, recognized the limits of expansion and focused on consolidation. He famously ordered the construction of Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain, marking the empire's frontier and symbolizing Rome's resolve to defend rather than endlessly conquer. These emperors were philosopher kings in a classical mold. Marcus Aurelius, the last of the five, was not only a ruler, but also a Stoic thinker. His meditations, written in quiet reflection during military campaigns, offer insights into leadership, resilience, and the human condition. In his writings, we hear the voice of a man burdened with duty, striving to remain just and humble amidst great power. This golden age was not only one of political stability and territorial control, it was a time of cultural brilliance. Roman art and architecture flourished. The Pantheon, with its vast dome and oculus open to the sky, remains a marvel to this day. Literature, too, reached high peaks, with poets such as Virgil, Ovid, and Horace composing works that would echo through history. Virgil's Aeneid, a national epic linking Rome's origins to the hero Aeneas of Troy, offered both a mythic past and a model of Roman virtues. Ovid, with his playful and poetic tales and the metamorphoses, captured the complexities of love, transformation, and myth. Seneca the Younger, a Stoic philosopher and advisor to Nero, pondered ethics and the nature of the soul in an age of imperial excess. Education spread, with rhetoric and philosophy taught to aspiring young Romans. Cities across the empire, from Ephesus in the east to Lyon in Gaul, mirrored Rome's layout: forums, baths, temples, amphitheaters, each a miniature reflection of the capital's grandeur. Public life was vibrant. The forum remained the heart of civic activity, where citizens met, debated, and traded. Public baths, known as thermae, served as centers of hygiene, relaxation, and conversation. Romans might spend hours there, bathing, exercising, discussing politics or poetry, while enjoying the comforts of heated floors and running water. Trade routes connected distant parts of the empire. Egyptian grain fed the urban populations. Spanish silver fueled the economy. Spices, silks, and gems arrived from as far away as India and China. The Mediterranean, once a contested sea, had become Mare Nostrum, our sea, a highway of commerce and communication. Of course, this peace was not without its shadows. Slavery remained widespread, the foundation upon which much of Roman labor rested. In the provinces, uprisings flared from time to time, and not all subjects welcomed Roman rule. Yet for many, Roman governance brought roads, order, and a degree of protection unknown in more fragmented lands. Religiously, Rome was tolerant but pragmatic. The empire absorbed the gods and rituals of conquered peoples, so long as they did not challenge imperial authority. Temples to Jupiter, Mars, and Venus stood beside shrines to Isis, Mithras, and other deities from the east. Religion was deeply interwoven with civic life, a means of honoring ancestors, appeasing the gods, and affirming Rome's divine destiny. It was during this time that a new faith quietly took root: Christianity. Emerging from the eastern province of Judea, it began as a small sect within Judaism. Its teachings of humility, compassion, and eternal life found followers, especially among the poor and marginalized. At first, the Roman state ignored it. Then, it began to persecute its followers. But despite the pressure, or perhaps because of it, the movement grew. For now, Christianity remained on the margins. Rome's gods still held sway. Festivals filled the calendar. Chariots raced through the Circus Maximus. Gladiators fought in the Colosseum, cheered on by thousands. Emperors were worshipped, their images placed in temples, their decrees obeyed with reverence. The empire was vast, from desert forts in Syria to windswept garrisons in Britannia. Soldiers kept watch. In cities, citizens strolled beneath marble columns. In villas, landowners wrote letters and managed estates. Life was complex, layered, and remarkably interconnected. Rome had become more than a city, more than even an empire. It was an idea, a civilization, a structure of laws, language, and culture that would echo long after the stones of the Forum fell silent. And yet, even in this time of peace, the seeds of future troubles were already taking root. After centuries of glory, the Roman Empire began to show signs of strain. The decline was not sudden, like the fall of a building, but gradual, like a long twilight settling over a once bright sky. And yet, even in this slow unraveling, life continued. Cities thrived, and emperors still ruled. The Rome of this era remained grand, but increasingly fragile. The end of the Pax Romana is generally marked by the death of Marcus Aurelius in 180 CE. His son, Commodus, inherited the throne, not by merit, but by blood. Unlike his father, Commodus was erratic and self-indulgent, more interested in games and spectacle than governance. His rule was a shift, a crack in the once sturdy facade. Over the next century, Rome would experience repeated challenges. Emperors came and went, often violently. Civil wars became more frequent. Generals fought for power, and loyalty to the state began to falter. This was the time historians call the crisis of the 3rd century, a period marked by economic collapse, plagues, foreign invasions, and political chaos. Between 235 and 284 CE, over 25 emperors claimed the throne, many ruling only briefly before being overthrown or assassinated. The empire fractured. At times, breakaway states emerged, such as the Gallic Empire in the west and the Palmyrene Empire in the east. The unity of Rome seemed to be slipping away. And yet, there were moments of resilience. One of the key figures who helped pull Rome back from the brink was Emperor Diocletian. Rising from humble origins, he came to power in 284 CE and realized that the empire was simply too vast for one person to govern effectively. His solution was radical but pragmatic. He divided the empire. He created the tetrarchy, rule of four, where the empire would be governed by two senior emperors, known as Augusti, and two junior emperors, or Caesars. This system was meant to ensure orderly succession and manage regional issues more effectively. While it had its flaws, it temporarily stabilized the crumbling state. Diocletian also implemented sweeping reforms. He reorganized the army, attempted to control inflation, and increase the bureaucracy. But his reign also saw one of the last major persecutions of Christians. By this point, Christianity had grown substantially, its followers meeting in private homes and catacombs. Their faith carried quietly through every level of society. Not long after Diocletian's retirement, another transformative figure emerged, Constantine the Great. Taking power after a series of civil wars, Constantine defeated his rivals and became the sole emperor. At the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE, legend holds that he saw a vision, a cross in the sky, and the words, "In this sign, conquer." He won the battle, and shortly after, he embraced Christianity. In 313 CE, the Edict of Milan was issued, granting religious tolerance throughout the empire and officially ending the persecution of Christians. This was a watershed moment. Over time, Christianity would move from a fringe sect to the dominant religion of the Roman world. Constantine also made a bold geographic move. Recognizing the strategic and economic advantages of the eastern provinces, he chose to found a new imperial capital at Byzantium, later renamed Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. This city, lying on the cusp between Europe and Asia, would become the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire for over 1,000 years. As the eastern half of the empire flourished, the West began to falter. Rome itself, once the center of the known world, began to lose its primacy. The economy suffered, trade networks frayed, urban populations declined, and on the frontiers, new and powerful enemies gathered. Among them were the Germanic tribes, the Visigoths, Vandals, and Ostrogoths, who had long interacted with Rome, sometimes as foes, sometimes as allies. Pressures from the east pushed these tribes toward Roman territory. One of the greatest upheavals came when the Huns, a nomadic people from Central Asia, stormed across the steppes, displacing other tribes and sending waves of migration into Roman lands. In 376 CE, thousands of Visigoths sought refuge within the empire's borders. Initially allowed to settle, they were mistreated by Roman officials. This led to rebellion, and in 378 CE, the Roman armies suffered a devastating defeat at the Battle of Adrianople. The Emperor Valens was killed in battle, a rare and symbolic blow to imperial dignity. By the early 5th century, Germanic tribes were moving deep into Roman territory. In 410 CE, the unthinkable happened. Rome was sacked by the Visigoths under Alaric. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City had fallen to a foreign army. While the empire still existed in name, the center of gravity had clearly shifted. The Western Roman Empire limped on for several more decades. Weak emperors ruled briefly, often manipulated by powerful generals or barbarian warlords. In 455, Rome was sacked again, this time by the Vandals. In 476 CE, the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. The Western Roman Empire, as a political entity, had come to an end. And yet, Rome did not truly fall. Its eastern counterpart, the Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive. In Constantinople, emperors still wore purple robes, issued edicts, and commanded armies. Roman law, culture, and institutions persisted. The city's walls stood strong, and its churches gleamed with mosaics of gold and glass. Meanwhile, in the West, the legacy of Rome lived on in other forms. The Latin language evolved, but never vanished. Roman roads continued to shape travel routes. Roman law influenced emerging legal codes. The Catholic Church, heir to Roman administration, became a central force in medieval Europe. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was not the end of civilization, but a transformation. New kingdoms arose: Visigoths in Spain, Franks in Gaul, Lombards in Italy. These peoples adopted many Roman customs, even as they forged their own identities. To many, the memory of Rome remained potent. Charlemagne, centuries later, would be crowned Emperor of the Romans in an attempt to revive its legacy. The idea of Rome, of order, law, and imperial grandeur, never faded completely. It lingered like the warm stones of a ruined forum at dusk, a memory etched into the foundations of Europe. Though the Western Roman Empire fell in the late 5th century, its influence did not. Rome may no longer have ruled the known world, but it had already shaped it. From language and law to architecture, religion and philosophy, the echoes of Roman civilization continue to whisper through time. Begin with the roads. Built with meticulous care, Roman roads connected not only cities, but cultures. All roads lead to Rome, the saying goes, and even today, many modern routes trace the paths first laid by Roman engineers. Their roads were more than infrastructure. They were arteries of empire, carrying armies, goods, ideas, and people across thousands of miles. Next, consider the language. Latin, once the voice of emperors and scribes, did not disappear with the fall of the empire. Instead, it evolved. In Gaul, it became French. In Hispania, it became Spanish. In the Italian peninsula, it transformed into Italian. Portuguese and Romanian, too, share these ancient roots. Collectively, these are the Romance languages, named not for emotion, but for Rome. Even in English, which comes primarily from Germanic roots, Roman influence is evident. Through the church, through law, and through learning, Latin left its mark. Words like justice, emperor, senate, and empire still echo Rome's voice. For centuries, Latin remained the language of scholarship and diplomacy in Europe. It was, in a sense, the ghost tongue of empire. Roman law, too, endured. The codification of laws under emperors like Justinian in the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire would serve as a foundation for many European legal systems. The principles of justice, property, and citizenship developed under Roman rule influenced thinkers and lawmakers well into the Enlightenment. Then there is the Roman vision of the city. The Romans were consummate urban planners. They designed cities with forums, baths, amphitheaters, aqueducts, and straight ordered streets. Many European cities, London, Paris, Cologne, began as Roman settlements. Even today, the remains of Roman walls, roads, and public buildings are stitched into the fabric of these cities. Roman architecture inspires awe to this day. The dome of the Pantheon, still standing in modern Rome, is a marvel of engineering and beauty. Arches, vaults, and concrete construction enabled structures of unprecedented scale and elegance. The Basilica, originally a Roman civic building, became the model for Christian churches. The Colosseum, the Aqueduct, the Triumphal Arch, each a symbol, each a template for future builders. And of course, there was Christianity. Once a persecuted faith, it became inseparable from Rome's legacy. The church inherited many aspects of Roman organization: its hierarchical structure, its use of Latin, its central authority. After the fall of the Western Empire, the Bishop of Rome, later called the Pope, emerged as a figure of immense spiritual and political importance. In the Middle Ages, when kingdoms rose and fell, the memory of Rome remained a constant. Monarchs styled themselves in its image. Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the Romans in 800 CE, not in Rome, but in Aachen, an echo, not a restoration. The Holy Roman Empire, which lasted for nearly 1,000 years, was more a tribute to Roman grandeur than a continuation of it. In the East, the Byzantine Empire, the true successor of Rome, continued for nearly another millennium after the fall of the West. Constantinople, with its massive walls and glittering churches, carried forward Roman law, Greek philosophy, and Christian theology. Emperors ruled in Roman fashion, and the state called itself Romaioi, the Romans. It wasn't until 1453, when Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks, that this Eastern Roman world came to an end. But even then, its legacy was passed on. Russian czars would later call Moscow the Third Rome, believing themselves to be inheritors of both Christian and imperial tradition. Culturally, Rome has always fascinated the world. During the Renaissance, artists, scholars, and architects turned once again to Roman ideals. They studied ancient texts, sculpted in Roman style, and rebuilt cities with Roman balance and proportion. Michelangelo, Raphael, and Bramante found inspiration not just in scripture, but in stone ruins and faded manuscripts. In political thought, Rome has served as both warning and guide. Thinkers from Machiavelli to Montesquieu studied the rise and fall of the Republic and the Empire. The American founding fathers, for example, were deeply influenced by Roman republicanism. The architecture of Washington, D.C., its domes, columns, and neoclassical facades, mirrors the buildings of ancient Rome. Even the names of legislative bodies, such as the Senate, are drawn directly from Roman precedent. Philosophically, Stoicism, deeply associated with Roman thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, continues to inspire. Its teachings on resilience, virtue, and rationality offer timeless guidance. In a world of uncertainty, Stoic calm remains appealing, especially in moments of personal reflection. The legacy of Rome is also in symbols. The eagle, the fasces, the laurel wreath, the SPQR banner all endure in flags, emblems, and state insignia. Across centuries and continents, leaders have sought to channel Rome's gravitas and grandeur, but perhaps Rome's most enduring gift is the idea of continuity. the sense that civilization can endure even through change. Rome fell, and yet it never fully disappeared. It became part of what came next. In every university lecture, every legal code, every bridge or tunnel, there is something of Rome. And as travelers walk through modern Rome today, they can feel that continuity. Cars circle ancient ruins. Cafes stand beside marble columns. Tourists gaze upward in quiet wonder beneath the dome of the Pantheon or along the worn stones of the Via Appia. Time moves forward, and yet here, the past is present. Rome is more than a historical empire. It is a layer of human memory, a story told across generations. Its rhythms, its triumphs and failures, its ambitions and ideals are woven into the fabric of the modern world. And so, as the stars rise above the seven hills and the Tiber flows gently through the city's heart, we remember a civilization that still speaks, not in commands or conquests, but in echoes. Echoes of law and language, echoes of marble and prayer, echoes of people who built, dreamed, ruled, and fell, and who, in doing so, gave shape to all that came after. In a small village nestled within the soft hills of what is now Croatia, the year was 1856. It was a quiet night in Smiljan, and above, the sky shimmered with stars. Beneath that ancient sky, a child was born into the world. His name was Nikola Tesla. It is said that his arrival came during a thunderstorm. The midwife considered it a bad omen, but his mother, with calm certainty, declared, "No, he will be a child of light." His early life unfolded in a home filled with books, ideas, and stories. His father, a Serbian Orthodox priest and a writer, spent long hours penning sermons and poetry. His mother, though she never had formal education, possessed an extraordinary gift, the ability to invent. She crafted household tools and intricate designs from whatever was available. It was from her that young Nikola inherited his quiet creativity. From an early age, Nikola displayed a deep inner world. He saw patterns in the rain, heard music in the wind, and imagined machines that had never been built. He would often sit for hours watching water flow, imagining how to harness its power. Nature was not just beautiful to him, it was a language he longed to understand. But young Tesla's mind was not always a peaceful place. He experienced vivid visions, flashes of light, and moments of intense sensitivity. He could visualize inventions in his mind, turning them over like physical objects, down to every detail, long before putting anything to paper. It sometimes overwhelmed him, but it also gave him comfort. In his own quiet way, he lived in two worlds, one of reality and one of boundless imagination. His childhood was filled with wonder, but also with hardship. One of the defining moments of his youth was the tragic loss of his older brother, Dane. The grief echoed through the household, and it left a deep imprint on Nikola's heart. Though he was still young, he seemed to carry the weight of quiet reflection, retreating further into his thoughts and dreams. He found comfort in reading. He devoured books of science, poetry, and philosophy, often under candlelight. His favorite stories were not of warriors or kings, but of thinkers, those who gazed at the stars and questioned how the world worked. As he grew, so did his fascination with energy. He would spend long hours imagining how invisible forces moved through the world. Static electricity, magnetism, and light. These were not abstract ideas to Tesla. To him, they were living forces with rhythm and character. Though his family lived modestly, they supported his thirst for learning. His father initially hoped Nikola would follow the priesthood, but seeing his son's passion, he eventually allowed him to pursue engineering. It was a quiet act of support that would open the door to a life of discovery. By the time Nikola left for his studies, the village of Smiljan had already shaped the foundation of his mind, a place where silence was rich with thought and darkness was not to be feared, but explored. The world outside Smiljan was vast and electric, and young Nikola Tesla stepped into it with quiet curiosity. He began his formal education at the Technical University in Graz, where his days were filled with study and quiet observation. Tesla was no ordinary student. He possessed a memory that bordered on photographic. He could read a book and recite entire pages from memory, and he rarely needed to take notes. In the quiet corners of libraries and lecture halls, he absorbed knowledge like a sponge. Mathematics, physics, mechanics, each subject feeding the expanding world inside his mind. But what made Tesla truly different was not just what he learned, but how he thought. He had the rare ability to visualize devices in full operation entirely in his imagination. Before he ever touched a tool, he had already built and tested the machine in his mind. This approach puzzled some of his professors, who questioned why he did not draw blueprints. But Tesla did not need drawings. His mind was the workshop. During his time at university, Tesla first encountered the concept of alternating current, a form of electricity that reverses direction periodically. It fascinated him. Most of the world, including companies like Edison's, used direct current, which moved in a single direction. But Tesla saw something more elegant in the oscillation of AC. It felt closer to nature, like the tides of the ocean or the rhythm of breathing. In Graz, Tesla became deeply engrossed in electricity's mysteries. He would walk alone for hours, turning ideas over in his head. Though he was quiet in demeanor, a storm of thought often swirled behind his calm expression. He became so focused that he would forget to eat or sleep or respond to letters from his family. But academic life wasn't always easy. Despite his brilliance, Tesla eventually left university without graduating. The exact reasons remain uncertain. Perhaps financial hardship, perhaps exhaustion. What is clear is that he left with his vision intact, the dream of creating a better way to generate and transmit electrical energy. After leaving school, Tesla wandered through a period of solitude and modest work. He spent time in Maribor working as a draftsman. He later reunited with his family in Gospic, where he faced personal struggles, including illness and inner turmoil. But even during these quiet years, the spark of invention never left him. Tesla would later describe how moments of insight came to him like flashes of light. While walking through a park, the image of a rotating magnetic field came to him, an idea that would become the heart of his induction motor. He picked up a stick and began drawing diagrams in the sand, speaking softly to the wind and trees, as if explaining the vision to the universe itself. His calm persistence was beginning to shape something remarkable. While others chased fame or fortune, Tesla pursued elegance, solutions that were not only functional but beautifully simple. He sought to bring light to the world in the purest form he could imagine. By now, his thoughts had outgrown his surroundings. Europe, though rich in science, lacked the resources Tesla needed to build his inventions. There was only one place that could offer both, a land of rising industry, of promise and challenge, America. With little money in his pocket and a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla boarded a ship and quietly set sail across the Atlantic. He did not know what he would find, only that the current of his life was pulling him forward. The Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly beneath the ship that carried Nikola Tesla to a new world. It was 1884, and the journey from Europe to New York City took several days, long, quiet hours, where Tesla would often stand at the railing, watching the waves rise and fall like breathing. America greeted him with noise, lights, and chaos. New York was unlike anything he had seen. Horses clattered across cobblestones, smoke rose from chimneys, and advertisements flickered across buildings. Yet amidst all this noise, Tesla moved quietly, focused, observant, almost invisible. He arrived with only a few belongings, some personal notes, and a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison, one of the most powerful names in the electrical world. The letter, written by a mutual contact in Europe, described Tesla as a genius and suggested that Edison might benefit from his talents. Edison, already famous for his work on the incandescent light bulb and direct current systems, welcomed Tesla into his company. The two men could not have been more different. Edison was practical, hands-on, and driven by trial and error. Tesla, on the other hand, was theoretical, deliberate, and preferred working out complete solutions in his mind before touching a tool. Tesla admired Edison's tenacity, but quickly saw flaws in the direct current system. DC electricity could not travel far without losing power. It required many substations to transmit over distances. Tesla quietly proposed a better alternative, alternating current, which could be transmitted much farther and more efficiently using transformers. Edison, however, was unconvinced. He had invested heavily in DC infrastructure and saw AC as not only risky, but as a threat. Though Tesla worked tirelessly for Edison, at one point redesigning entire systems and improving machinery, a promised financial reward was never delivered. When Tesla questioned it, Edison reportedly laughed and said, "You don't understand our American humor." Disheartened, but not defeated, Tesla left the company. He took on a series of physically demanding jobs, digging ditches and doing electrical repairs just to survive. Yet even in these difficult times, his thoughts remained elsewhere, on the oscillating power of AC and the peaceful hum of a more elegant electrical world. Tesla eventually secured support from investors and filed patents for his AC motor and polyphase system. His designs were not only brilliant, but revolutionary. In 1888, his work caught the attention of another key figure in the electrical age, George Westinghouse, a man who believed in Tesla's vision and had the resources to make it real. Westinghouse saw the future in Tesla's work. He purchased the patents and brought Tesla into his company. Together, they set out to build a new electrical system, one that could power homes, cities, and dreams. Where Edison had been skeptical, Westinghouse was supportive, and Tesla, for the first time, found a collaborator who understood his quiet genius. The world would soon take notice, but at this stage, Tesla remained largely in the shadows, working late into the night in his laboratory, speaking softly to his machines, and dreaming of a world lit not just by bulbs, but by imagination. Even in success, Tesla sought solitude. Fame was never his goal. He found peace in the sound of humming wires, the dance of sparks, and the precise rhythm of gears. His world was not built on applause, but on the silent harmony of invention. With George Westinghouse's support, Tesla's ideas began to take shape, not just on paper, but in glowing wires and humming motors. The alternating current system was gaining ground, and its quiet elegance began to outshine the brute force of Edison's direct current. The defining moment came with the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. The fair was a celebration of progress, and Westinghouse secured the contract to illuminate it using Tesla's AC system. The result was breathtaking. Over 100,000 electric lights lit up the fairgrounds, creating a luminous landscape unlike anything the world had seen. People wandered through the glowing pavilions in silent awe, as though they had stepped into a dream. For many, it was their first encounter with electric light, soft, steady, and magical. Tesla gave demonstrations of wireless lighting, using glass tubes that glowed in his hands without any visible connection. He moved gently, letting the light dance between his fingers, as if inviting the audience into the quiet wonder of his world. This moment marked a turning point. Alternating current was no longer a theory, it was the future. Soon after, Tesla's systems were used in the Niagara Falls power plant, one of the first large-scale hydroelectric stations. There, the river's endless flow was transformed into electricity, lighting up entire cities miles away. For Tesla, this was a dream fulfilled, to harness the forces of nature without harming them, and to bring light to people far and wide. Yet, as his fame grew, Tesla remained deeply private. He often dined alone, walked at night, and avoided crowds. He found comfort in routine, walking exactly 8 times around a block before entering a building, or always folding his napkin in a specific way. These habits, though curious to others, gave Tesla a sense of calm. He continued to explore new ideas. One of his dreams was wireless energy transmission, the idea that power could be sent through the air without wires. He experimented with tall towers and high-frequency currents, imagining a world where people could receive electricity and information across great distances, effortlessly and freely. His lab in Colorado Springs became a kind of temple to these ideas. Surrounded by open land and mountain air, Tesla built enormous coils that sent lightning crackling into the sky. Neighbors reported glowing lights in the ground, strange signals in the air, and electric arcs dancing along fences. But Tesla remained calm and focused. To him, it was not magic, it was harmony. He believed the Earth itself could carry electrical energy, and he sought to tap into those natural rhythms. In one experiment, he created electrical surges so powerful they temporarily blacked out the nearby power station. Yet even as he pushed the boundaries of science, his approach was quiet, methodical, and peaceful. Tesla's vision was not just technical, but human. He spoke of a world where machines would serve humanity without toil, where communication would be wireless and instantaneous, and where energy would be abundant and free. These were not wild dreams to him. They were natural extensions of nature's own elegance. Still, the world often struggled to understand him. Investors grew impatient, preferring inventions that turned quick profits. The press alternated between fascination and skepticism. And while his inventions changed the world, Tesla himself became more isolated, content in his own company and in the hum of distant currents only he could hear. As the 20th century unfolded, the world began moving faster. New inventions, wars, and industries transformed society at a breathtaking pace. But in the midst of this change, Nikola Tesla continued his quiet work, exploring the hidden layers of nature, often alone. His greatest triumphs were already behind him: alternating current, wireless experiments, and the lighting of cities. But his mind wandered even further now, to ideas many still struggle to understand today. He believed in invisible energies that moved through space, in vibrations that could influence thought, and even in the possibility of communicating with other planets. He spent his final major years living at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City, often feeding pigeons in the park and speaking gently to them. There was one white pigeon he loved dearly. He said she visited him every day, and when she became ill, he cared for her tenderly. In her final moments, he claimed he saw a light shining from her eyes unlike anything he had ever seen, a light as beautiful as anything he had created. By now, Tesla's finances had crumbled. Many of his projects went unfunded, and his notes were scattered between laboratories and storage trunks. He was offered awards and honors, but rarely attended the ceremonies. His name faded from headlines, even as the world continued to use the very systems he had invented. On January 7, 1943, in a small room on the 33rd floor of the New Yorker Hotel, Nikola Tesla passed away in his sleep. He was 86 years old. Outside, the city pulsed with electricity. Lights flickered, radios buzzed, and trains rumbled below, all powered in part by his genius. In death, Tesla became more than a man. His name became a symbol of quiet brilliance, of boundless curiosity, and of a vision that looked far beyond what others thought possible. Over time, his legacy was rediscovered. Streets were named after him. The unit of magnetic field strength, the Tesla, bears his name. And decades later, a company building electric cars and exploring space would also take that name, carrying his spirit into the future. What made Tesla extraordinary was not just what he built, but how he thought. While others looked for control and profit, he looked for harmony between humans and nature, between light and energy, between what was and what could be. His story, when told softly, becomes not a tale of loss, but of light, a calming reminder that some minds live quietly among us, dreaming not of glory, but of wonder. And as you drift into rest, let the hum of distant currents, the ones Tesla once imagined, surround you like a warm blanket. The world he dreamed of, full of light and quiet brilliance, still echoes softly through the wires that run around us all. Good night.